On a cold evening, Sarah and her dad, Don, were rushing through the city in their car. The car's engine roared as they drove quickly. In the back seat, Marie was having a hard time breathing, and her condition was getting worse every second. Suddenly, Marie stopped breathing, which made Sarah panic. She shouted, "Faster, Dad, please," with a scared voice. When they got to the hospital, Don told Sarah sternly, "Keep quiet now." They stopped the car, and the hospital staff quickly came to help Marie, giving her oxygen to try to save her. Inside the hospital, there was a lot of noise from the medical machines. Despite the staff's quick actions, the heart monitor showed that Marie did not make it. The story then takes us back 20 years to a family dinner that seemed perfect on the outside. Young Sarah and her sister Amy were eating with their parents Don and Irina. The sound of forks and knives was the background to a family dinner that soon became stressful. Don, who was very strict, told Sarah she couldn't go to a party, making it clear he was in charge. That night, Sarah snuck out to see her boyfriend Chris, leaving her family behind. When her dad found out, he was very angry and called her the problem child of the family. At the party, Sarah felt happy. She and Chris danced under the lights and he played a song he wrote for her. They kissed, feeling happy together. But when Sarah got home in the morning, her dad was waiting. They ended up arguing because Sarah was upset. She told him she would leave home as soon as she turned 18. She shared her plans to travel and work across the country with her mom and Amy later. Sarah's dad, Don, overheard a conversation and was drawn to the basement, his special hangout which he called his man cave. Behind a bookshelf, he discovered a hidden room that no one else in the house knew about. 3 months later, Sarah was graduating, looking forward to a bright future. During a deep talk with her mom, Irene, it came out that Don had been spending a lot of time in the basement. One day when Irene was not home, Don asked Sarah to help him carry a box to the basement. There, he showed her the hidden room, claiming it was an old bomb shelter. Before she realized what was happening, he locked her inside. The room was soundproof, so no one could hear her screams. As days passed and Sarah didn't return, Irene grew very worried and called the police. 4 days into Sarah's disappearance, Don coldly told her the harsh rules of her new life. She would have to earn everything she needed, even the air she breathed. A police officer suggested that Sarah might have left for her planned trip across the country, but Irene was sure Sarah wouldn't leave without saying goodbye, especially not before her 18th birthday. Meanwhile, Sarah, stuck and alone, thought back to her times with Chris, her boyfriend. When Chris came looking for her, Don lied, saying Sarah had run off with Steve, a childhood neighbor, after graduation. On her 18th birthday, in the hidden room, Don gave Sarah a chilling gift, a cake and a red nightgown. Her request for a clock was met with a demand for obedience in return for any favors. When she resisted, Don became violent. Nearly a year later, Sarah faced a terrible situation alone in the basement. She gave birth to a daughter she named Marie. 4 years later, as Sarah was pregnant again, Don continued his double life. One upstairs with Irene and Amy, and a darker one in the basement with Sarah and Marie. Irene, still tormented by her daughter's disappearance, thought about hiring a private investigator, but Don quickly stopped her from doing so. Don got a TV as a thank you gift for Sarah and her daughter Mary for behaving well. As time went by, Sarah had a second child, a boy named Michael. To make their tough life seem a bit better, Sarah turned their scary experiences into a bedtime story about princesses and brave knights for her kids. Meanwhile, Chris, who was still looking for answers about Sarah, visited the house again. Amy, Sarah's sister, couldn't keep the secret anymore and told him the truth about why Sarah was missing. They both were scared of Don, knowing he could be very angry and possibly dangerous. As days turned into months, Sarah made up exciting stories for her kids, trying to protect them from the sad reality of where they were. Inside the house, Amy and their mom, Irene, confronted Don about his lies, which led to a big fight. Irene was determined and said she would do anything to find her daughter. During the chaos, Don accidentally dropped his keys. Amy quickly took them to look for clues in the basement. Their fight got intense when Don took back his keys and argued with Amy, who was now both scared and very angry at him for hiding Sarah. Later, Sarah had another boy, Thomas. She calmly convinced Don that there was no room for another child in the basement and managed to get Don to take Thomas upstairs. She put together a plan, leaving Thomas on the porch with a note in the basket, pretending she and her boyfriend couldn't take care of him, and asking Irene to take care of him. But under that was a secret message asking for help from Sarah. Sadly, Don Don found the note first and punished Sarah again. Years went by. In their basement prison, Sarah's children grew up with only her stories and their imaginations. Marie, now a young girl, tried on makeup one night, maybe dreaming of a different life. Sarah faced a scary truth. Her father, Don, was paying too much attention to her daughter Marie's looks. Sarah begged him not to hurt Marie. In response, Don cruelly cut off the power to their air system, making the air in their space stale and hard to breathe. During this tough time, Marie talked about feeling very lonely and worried about never having friends or a normal life. It was then that Marie revealed she didn't fully understand their family's twisted situation. She didn't know Don was both her grandfather and her father. Upstairs, Thomas, now grown up, found Irene, Marie's grandmother, crying in Sarah's old room. Irene missed Sarah a lot and told Thomas all about Sarah's good qualities, making it clear how much they both loved and missed Sarah. Meanwhile, as a storm happened outside, water started leaking into the basement. Seeing a chance, Sarah climbed to check where the water was coming from. She found a weak spot in the roof and started digging with a spoon, making a small hole to the outside and trying to get help. Sadly, a neighbor saw the hole but told Don instead of helping. When Don found out Sarah tried to escape, he hurt her badly and Sarah lost her unborn baby because of the beating. Sarah cried as Don coldly buried the baby outside. Later, complaining about the rain damage, Don praised Thomas, who was very strong, setting him as an example for his hidden family. Marie and Michael, Sarah's other child, wondered when they could go outside. Don harshly blamed Sarah's supposed bad behavior for why they were locked up. Overwhelmed by her kids' questions and feeling trapped, Sarah lost her temper and their small home ended up a mess. After she calmed down, her kids covered her with a blanket and cleaned up. Feeling it was time they knew the truth, Sarah told them everything, including that the bedtime stories were based on her own life. She explained that Don was their grandfather and also their father. This hard truth triggered an asthma attack in Marie, showing the kids how deep and dark their family secret was and making them question their own lives. Sarah always told her kids she loved them and that Don was the one doing wrong. A year later, things got tense when Don made mean comments about Sarah's looks and started giving them less food because he was running out of money. Things got worse when he lost his job and was close to losing their house. Out of desperation, Don came up with a dangerous plan to end their lives by sending car exhaust into the air system of the basement. Luckily, Thomas found him in the garage by accident and stopped him without knowing, saving everyone. While Don and the others had a normal barbecue in the yard, Marie, who was still locked below, had trouble breathing as her health got worse. In a desperate moment, Sarah begged Don to take Marie to the hospital and promised to keep quiet about what was happening. Don agreed but left Michelle behind. This leads to the beginning of our story where Marie is rushed to the hospital after being trapped for 20 years. At the hospital, as doctors tried to help Marie, a nurse asked about her past and found out she was taught at home and used natural remedies. During this crisis, Sarah looked for a way to escape. She spilled water on some forms and got away from Don. Just before Don could catch her, she told a nurse she needed help. A police officer came up to Don, leading to his arrest, and Sarah told Marie they were finally safe. The police also rescued Michael from the basement, and his need for fresh air worried Irene and Thomas. Don could only watch from a police car as his secrets came out. Now, on a sunny day, Marie, Thomas, and Michael played outside in the countryside, watched by Sarah, Irene, and Amy from the porch. Then Chris showed up on a motorcycle. Reuniting with Sarah, he was sorry he hadn't looked harder for her, tricked by Don's lies. He gave her a pink motorcycle helmet he had bought when they were 18, meant for trips they planned. Together, they started their motorcycle ride, a sign of their new freedom and a fresh start.